Hi, this is Kyle Carr from Walking 90. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Due to some technical issues, we were unable to get the first part of our episode available. So it's going to jump straight into the interview that we did with FC Tucson President Amanda Powers and Coach John Pearlman. So that is the introduction. We apologize for that, but you should be able to enjoy the episode. If you have any questions, make sure to follow us at Walking 90 Pod, and we hope to see you again in the future. Make sure to rate, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Thanks.
Um, Actually, I just went to the same high school as me in San Diego, so I kind of joke that we're two San Diego girls out here in Tucson doing it up in sports. But um, I'm the president of FC Tucson. We have a men's League One team, a women's WPSL team that's undefeated, Desert Conference champions. This will be our ninth season on the women's game. And then we have a academy, a USL Pro Academy for 14 to 19-year-old boys that we launched last year, and we just continue to keep investing in. And I got into soccer about 7 years ago when I was part of a group out of Albuquerque, New Mexico of PDL, formerly PDL, now League Two, team owners that were trying to bring pro soccer to the state of New Mexico. And at that time, I really didn't know much about soccer. I'm a total jock, but I'm actually like one of the average Americans out there that didn't grow up with the game. But once you kind of bring me into the game, I'm a huge fan. So I like to say that I'm actually one of the core kind of markets that we need to be talking to in the soccer world to grow our game. But it was a guy who was running the PDL team called the Albuquerque Soul, which was one of John Pearlman's arch nemesis teams. And for 3 years, we were behind the scenes making the case for bringing a pro USL franchise to the state. And I just happened to work in economic development and was a business analyst that wrote a feasibility study for the city of Albuquerque to build a downtown soccer stadium. And that 120-page study caught the attention of Peter Trevisani. And Peter, who's the owner of New Mexico United, read the study, and he called me one day and said, "Amanda fundraised the $15 million to build the USL franchise, and I want you to shut your business down and come help start New Mexico United." And so I just took a lot of my background working in startups and really kind of my upbringing. I was raised in an activist household on how to build movements. And I think with soccer, that's the only way you can really do this is through the grassroots, authentic movement making that we have to do one conversation at a time, one game at a time. And so, I had some success, obviously, with Mexico United. And then I went on to consult with some other new USL ownership groups. So formerly the Roughnecks, new ownership group, now FC Tulsa, had hired me to come in and do a lot of their kind of back end, what happens when you buy a soccer team, what needs to happen in that changeover. And so I spent about 6 months in market in Tulsa, meeting with all the 83 United supporters, really trying to figure out what the Roughnecks was to the community and how I could kind of translate that to the new ownership group so that we could revitalize that brand. And then I got a call from Brett Johnson in late 2019 to come meet John Pearlman down in Tucson to take on the project of turning FC Tucson around. As you know, it was the end of our first inaugural season as a League One club, and a lot of lessons were learned at that time. Phoenix Rising on the team, and I was sort of recruited to come down and team up with John Pearlman and restore this club to the greatness that we always knew it could be. So throw a pandemic on there, and I've learned a lot in my 2 seasons here. But I couldn't be happier to lead this club with one of the original founders and visionaries, John Pearlman. And he and I are actually quite good friends, and I think we're good partners. So I'll speak for us, and I think we're both honored and happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much. Amanda covered a lot of it. I founded the team in the MLS preseason here in 2012 with Rick Shantz, who now sits as the head coach of Phoenix Rising in the USL Championship. We had some great seasons with him at the head coach and me as the GM in through 2017, where we sold the team to Phoenix Rising, and Rick was the assistant coach at that point for Phoenix Rising. And then I was offered the opportunity to be assistant coach for the Oklahoma Energy, and I went to Oklahoma for a year. Came back here as the director of soccer operations, and then was the VP of soccer ops and involved in both the technical and the business side until we had the opportunity. Unfortunately, we were struggling last year, and I got a chance to return to the bench, which is my background, was coaching for 20 years in Tucson. And we had a decent amount of success, and we were able to, move the team back up the table into the postseason. And I was honored to have the opportunity to become the technical director and head coach for 2022. And I oversee obviously the first team, and then the WPSL and academy on the technical side. I work with some great coaches that are part of our overall staff, and really just looking to work to put in our game model. And obviously, the return to the postseason is really what we're shooting for with all the teams.
So just to jump right on in, you guys started, you mentioned a little bit in the PDL, and then you came to USL League One and its inception. Tell me what that transition was like from going for I guess not professional to professional soccer.
Well, I think it was really challenging. I mean, I think, first of all, Phoenix Rising was incredible. They took the investment and gave us that opportunity. But, the fact was we were operated remotely from far away, and the ability for us to make decisions that were Tucson specific really wasn't there at that point. We were there to help Rising in their overall plan. And it was incredibly challenging, I think, not from the operational side. I mean, we running a preseason, which is a big event, and running a team, I mean, it was obviously upsized in the travel. But, I had some great people with me down there and some really great supporters from the beginning. But, it was definitely a challenge. And obviously, anytime you're in a league that's starting up, you have to go through the bumps and bruises that League One went through in the first year. And then obviously the pandemic was a whole other set of steak knives there. And, that was very challenging as well for us. But it was hard. Also, it's always, challenging when, you're, as the MLS teams find, when Rising needed a player, that player had to go. We had 3 of our best players signed right out of the gate from our team. And then, taking loans midweek without them being able to train. But that's part of being a 2 team. And I don't think Tucson was, as a community, was comfortable with that, and our sponsors. And I think Rising recognized that. And, with Brett taking over and giving us and Amanda the opportunity to run the team, specifically for Tucson, I think that transition was key for us. But then, of course, it's very important to be successful on the field, and we hadn't reached the level, we had with USL League Two, where we were, franchise of the year. We were perennially in the Western Conference Finals. We had made Open Cup runs. We had produced a number of MLS players. Aaron Long played for us. He captained the national team in 2018. Was on the World Cup qualifying group this year. So again, there was a lot of history to live up to, and we just hadn't been doing it, unfortunately, to that point. And really, we just sort of recommitted again this year to try to keep the team at the level we were able to operate towards the end of the season.
I was actually going to mention, with obviously the pandemic, because I feel like with a lot of teams, they had all these grand plans especially after the first year in USL League One. You kind of figure out what you're doing, you kind of get an idea of what the league's like, and then you have this pandemic. And how did that change? And both of you can answer this. How did that change how you went about coaching, or how you went about the operational standpoint, or even just like communication? Like, how did the pandemic kind of shift your approach?
Well, if I could just start with that. I had just moved to Tucson like January 1st, 2020. And I was like given this team. We're in a 20,000 square foot clubhouse here, 15,000 square feet downstairs of locker rooms that hosts the annual MLS preseason. And in a very short order, we had to get the MLS preseason off the ground at the end of January to mid-February, and then make our case for season ticket sales. And we were probably already 10 to 12 months behind every other team. I had a staff of 5. I had to go out and hire people. We had no systems. We had nothing. And I think, also John at that time was the director of soccer operations, and that was a rough year. It was the first year that League One had gotten off. We still have a lot of education in this country of what third division versus second division and first, and then all the pre-professional soccer levels really are and their role in player development. And so I was coming from a standpoint of, community building. That's what New Mexico United is so known for, and that's my bread and butter. And so when the pandemic broke out, as a female executive in sports that's never played soccer in my life, what is my role as a president of a club to tell a coach what he should be doing with his players? And so the first couple things that went through my head were, at that time, John Gallus was our coach. John was our vice president of soccer operations. And it felt very much like we were going to war. March 11th, season tickets went on sale. March 12th, the season was on hiatus. I had to go back to Albuquerque March 20th and move my husband and family down here. And it was kind of wild. And all I could think about, I have an innate ability to sort of think very future oriented. And all I could think was, what's going to happen to these kids? What's going to happen to the kids in our community after this thing is done? And we had no idea, but I knew it wasn't good. And I had to basically make a call between John Gallus and John Pearlman, guys that I've only worked with for 2.5 months. And if I'm trying to set a tone as a leader in an organization, and it almost feels like wartime. John Pearlman's wife also was an ER nurse in the ICU. So he was seeing things firsthand as well. I said to the Johns, our players are on guaranteed contracts for the next 10 months. I don't know if they're going to ever kick a ball this season, but I need to know that if Granny on wheels, or if we have to go and be a light to some kids that need some inspiration to keep them plugged into school and motivated, like, I want to be able to get your graces and your support to ask those guys to leave their apartment, because we're basically asking them to be on house arrest with the COVID protocols, to put a little risk of themselves to help the community. And that was sort of we talk about culture and ethos and how do you build a really strong like that was the sort of first brick or cornerstone, if you will, in a foundation that we were building together, because I needed to know that these guys were willing to go to their players who normally are, very well taken care of and not really asked to do too much outside of what they're, obligated to do, to say, look, there's so many unknowns right now. We don't know what's coming, but this is for the community. This is for the crest. I need to get your assurances that you're going to be willing to put these guys to work if we need them to work. And they said, yes. After that, I continue to sit on the COVID task force for the league. So all the protocols and everything. After that, John was the one, man, John, I feel like that was the longest year of our lives. And we spent a lot of nights on the calls together. But we only had one positive COVID test in all of 2020. But I think more importantly, how we built our team, I think, is really interesting because the way the protocols were written is that if one player tested positive, then we would immediately quarantine all their roommates. So that means if you had one player go down, 4 would go down, 3 would go down with him. And so we needed to say, okay, if that's your star striker who's going down, do you cancel a game or do you play the game and build your bench? And that's where we started to develop sort of a high performance program where John started rallying some of the local talent to come in, which are now our academy players. But those were the kinds of conversations as a league we all needed to have, which is in a time where all of your revenue potential as a front office is being restricted. Now we're asking you to go spend more money on players to build your bench in the event that a COVID outbreak could take everybody down, like we saw in the championship final in 2020. So, a lot of that kind of game theory contingency planning was certainly like what we were dealing with on a day-to-day. John, I don't know what else you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think I'll just speak to the technical side. Obviously, the long suspension was difficult. Your preseason started later. You didn't get a chance. We had at that point, had a lot of new players, which is not uncommon in League One, especially when we just moved from Rising's control to our control. I mean, the player pool changed drastically, and then you really didn't have the opportunity to bring in trialists the way you were. You signed players, and those were your players. I mean, we couldn't do tryouts, we couldn't do open tryouts because of player mixing. We were worried about everyone getting COVID, so we went with the roster we had, and there were some challenges there. Where John, in terms of building the roster, we couldn't pivot off what we had, and we didn't have a great start, and we ended up decently. We started 2-5-1. I think we ended up 500 in the middle of the table, which was, we were trending in the right direction, and kind of surviving that year and, being hopeful. But again, you were playing closed door games. I mean, it was really just a weird year to play. It was literally, you were playing basically felt like scrimmages with a TV element to it. So I'd never been through anything like that. The players, I think it was incredibly challenging because they were, you talk about mental health, our thing was we're very much allowing them to have their space as well to try to deal with that. And, when you're trying to push players to perform and to be their best and to ask more of them and challenge them, it really wasn't that kind of a year. It was the kind of year to support them and love them and be grateful that we were able to play and keep it going, because we wanted to make sure that we were building some relationships for players that were going to play for the following year, and hopefully we were going to be able to be, more commercially viable, obviously off the COVID. So I was straddling those two worlds. I'd helped as an interim assistant for a little bit, and then obviously pulled back once we found someone to help do that role. It helps me now, Mark Biaggi, and it was just a really tough year, I think, for all the teams, and obviously it was even more impressive, that somebody like Jay with a brand new team was able to do so well in that season.
I know, talking to some of the Omaha folks, I know they've had a lot of struggles with trying to get out into the community and sell the message of what Union Omaha was in a COVID year as the inaugural year. I have to imagine the challenge was probably even greater going to Tucson after you had already come out and said, hey, we're the Phoenix Rising 2 team, but then you switch back to being an independent team and trying to get back out there and say, well, no, we were a 2 team. We're not anymore. We're independent. We're playing exciting soccer. We're playing great soccer. Come down during COVID and check it out. Like, how was that, trying to get that message across in the community engagement during the middle of the pandemic and trying to get people back on board for FC Tucson?
Well, we have also FC Tucson Youth, which has 3,000 kids, and it's the major sort of youth affiliate in town, and it's a separate entity. We sit on the board, but we don't run the organization. We're not really involved in youth soccer, but it's confusing to the community. And I think just as a whole, in the state of Arizona, you have RSL clubs, you have Arsenal clubs, now you have surf in the state of Arizona. A lot of people are confused what professional soccer is in the first place. And so my expertise is market research and building an empathic brand. And so for us, and I don't know any other way other than innovate and survive. I'm highly competitive. And so when you're in times of desperation or I think it really does breed innovation and collaboration. And so while I was fighting, the county to try to allow us to have fans in the stands and, sit on the task force and give them all the updated, stadium plans that they were doing in Miami. If you remember, there was a Super Bowl that did go through, there was, or maybe not Miami, but Tampa Bay and all these other places. And then, of course, in Europe, they were playing soccer. And then, of course, our counterparts, Omaha, Chattanooga, Richmond. I know that Madison really struggled to get fans in the stands because of the deal with the city there. But what we did was we we doubled down on our digital. So we launched an app in May of 2020. And then we really went all in. You know, I had sunk costs no matter what with my ESPN broadcast. So I made some investments to make sure that if we're literally going to be the only game in town, then this is really good for the USL. And we need to put we have to put a stellar product out there. So one of the things that we did was we did make some investments into our broadcast, and then we did the extra work of hosting outdoor drive-in watch parties. So that was the only way I knew, was to honor our season ticket holders and our sponsors, which we didn't have to return $1 of sponsor dollars in 2020. And also, I mean, 90% of our season ticket holders just deferred for the next year. So it was a start there. And then I think we had a really good pulse on what was happening in the education space, in the tech space, in the government space. And at the end of the day, by the end of 2020, everybody was thinking, okay, well, the vaccines are looking pretty good. Maybe by mid 2021, we're going to have fans in the stands, but we didn't know for sure. And one thing I was really focused on was, how do I teach soccer culture? How we had kind of an anemic, I love my cactus pricks, but they are not as active as a supporters group, you know, that we'd like to see. And so how do I build a supporters group, or at least a place for supporters to want to take ownership of this team that's not like concocted in a bottle by the front office? And so we focused on two things. One, how do we build community, no matter whether it's a soccer community or not? And then two, how do we teach soccer culture once we bring that community together? So we launched in 2021 a series of what we call barrio to barrio events, where in Tucson, it's known as the Old Pueblo, and then within it is these little barrios. And so we did these pop-up block parties where we did vaccinations on site, and then we had tifo painting, drumming circles and chants, food trucks, all totally distanced, challenge games for the kids with Puma giveaways. And, you know, we got a few hundred people to come to this. And the whole thing was like, we sent a mailer to all 10,000 people who lived within that neighborhood. And we just kept doing this. We'd have player appearances. So it was very challenging because there's always a front office technical friction in protecting the players. But because there was such a lack of that in the last 18 months prior, we just felt like, you know, if we're masked up, maintaining our protocols according to the league, we can have people, we could show up at these barrio to barrio events and kind of accomplish these things that we needed to. So and all of that work has sort of paid off now to what you're seeing. You know, we had 700 people show up to our USA-Mexico matchup, 2 weeks ago. People are starting to take notice of FC Tucson. And it's like these things that we've been doing the last 2 years through the pandemic where nobody else was, that has stuck out. And I think it's starting to pay off now on that front.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I would answer that, and so Amanda, really, that's really what we tried to do. But Amanda was put in a very difficult situation because of, you know, for Rick and I mean, this was a grassroots effort. It was 4 Tucson guys originally, and it was 3, myself, Greg, and another individual it was literally our investment and our hustle, and we had taken risk to do this. And the team, it was very grassroots, and so was the MLS event, very popular, but also the team was neutral in terms of youth. So when I left for Oklahoma after we had sold the team, people were upset, but at the end of the day, we did, you know, we were running a MLS preseason to pay for the League Two team, and as upset as they weren't married or had, you know, basically put their own capital into something. It needed to be capitalized, and we couldn't find the right Tucson owner. And Rising's message to us was, we want to own the state in soccer. We want to help Tucson. We want this team to win. We love your event. We want to do all these things. And I think they were very well intentioned to do that, but the scope of it, you know, especially with the pandemic, and especially with, you know, what the League One really the massive undertaking is to run 2 teams, I think they just underestimated. So Amanda comes back and I come back into town because I can't bear the idea of not being there when my team starts the pro team. And I am, you know, my youth club has now my brand has been bought by the youth clubs without me doing so. Rising So that made the club non-neutral. So we had to sort of work to reestablish relationships. And then the youth club sort of felt hard done because Rising really wanted to do all these amazing things, but just didn't have the bandwidth to do it. So we both walked into a very difficult situation because the year I was there, I was just scrambling around to be the operator of teams. And when I say 4 or 5 guys were operating a pro team down in Tucson, I'm telling you, I'm the head coach now, but I was hiring people and signboards and arguing with the league and making sure the fields were getting mowed. And, and plus I was doing all the contracts. I mean, there was just a lot of work being done by a few number of people. And we were toasted. We were just burnt out, even the ones that loved it. So that first year was brutal. The second year we were coming around, and I was so happy going into last year with our plan. But the team has to do well, and that was really, the genesis. But you're right. There were angry Tucsonans. I mean, the people here, they saw Phoenix as a rival. We had won games against Phoenix teams in the early iterations in the Open Cup. They wanted to see that. They wanted to go toe-to-toe. And at some point you go, sometimes you have to think more globally. But, now that we have somebody championing us, I'm certainly happy to, try to do everything we can to compete with any city. But it wasn't unreasonable what was trying to happen. And sometimes the best laid plans. But, yeah, people felt we had, specifically me, they just simplified it to, you're not loyal to the city. I'm just like, how much blood did I have to spill? How many bridge loans did I have to take to keep this team going for you to know that it was my life? But fans, you know how you are. You don't want to – I'm not blaming – I love it. Everything you love about fandom it's fanaticism. So there's no reasonableness, and nor should there be. So, that's what we were dealing with.
Well, in 2021, we officially broke away with Phoenix Rising. So we did play the 2020 and with all, we have to obtain the highest levels of respect to our friends up the road.
Of course.
But, frankly, yeah, we had done some focus groups. We had done some listening parties with the Cactus Pricks. I wanted to know, I can't restore something or make it better unless I understand the acute issues. And what I do in that space, I know almost every soccer club in America could use somebody who's going and figure that stuff out. I mean, if they don't have a supporter liaison already on a team, you definitely need one, because supporters always got something that they want to share, or supporters are always looking for, to find a way. But one thing that's for sure in Wildcat country down here is we do not play second fiddle to Phoenix. And so that probably was one of the nails in the coffin, so to speak, for this club. And part of that sort of double, having to do double work. It's very different when you have a brand from scratch, when you're Union Omaha or New Mexico United, and I talked to Gary Green, and Gary Green said, had the pandemic not hit, Omaha probably would have caught, lightning in a bottle like we did in Albuquerque. But these soccer clubs, older clubs like ours or the Richmond Kickers, it's not like you've got a fresh brand and no baggage to go, you've got to really kind of understand what your issues are so that you can solve for that and try to make it better. And of course, winning always helps, which is why we made some of the coaching decisions, that we did last year. That was a very tough decision to let go of our coach. But I knew it was the right one. And but yeah, so much of just trying to understand the context. So maybe one day, if we ever go into championship, we can have a nice derby with Phoenix Rising and El Paso. And that would definitely be a sellout, no doubt.
Or just beat them in the Open Cup in the next round.
I was just about to mention the Open Cup. Obviously, you got Las Vegas Lights coming up this week. How do you feel about that matchup? How do you feel about your odds overall in the Open Cup?
Pearl.
Well, listen, the Open Cup is always ripe for opportunities for teams below to beat teams above for a number of reasons. One, we're at home. Two, there's just an energy about that tournament and unpredictability about it. And obviously, the question is where Vegas will put us in the priority of things, in terms of they just had a game this weekend as well, squad rotation, things like that. Hard to tell. But obviously for us, look, it's another chance for us to get out there and play. We've seen a lot of Las Vegas in the league. We've watched them play Rising, and we've been able to, come and, take the opportunity to say, like, look, this is a team that's in good form. They're an incredible counterattacking team, and we saw some of the counterattacking qualities, that Richmond had last weekend, and so hopefully, we're able to put together a solid plan, and the players elevate their performance, because we're going to have to be really good against that team to have a chance to win. But yeah, we're out there to win. I mean, every time we go on the field, we have the expectation of being successful and the demands on that. But yeah, I mean, we're excited to be home, and certainly we think it's a great opportunity.
Yeah. And an Open Cup's always one of those things where, you got a front office. It's like, oh my God, this is totally our story that we need to be telling. And this opportunity, the David and Goliath story of lower division soccer up against the big dogs. But it can really do a doozy. And we saw that in 2019 when New Mexico United had its deep run into the Cup. But it's a delicate balance, and you ultimately leave that decision up to your coach and technical director of, like, can we use this for a commercial value or for a fan value versus what's this going to really do to our squad, so.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like the pros is a deep run definitely attracts interest, but the cons is it can really mess up your league season, depending on obviously roster size. Hopefully the roster is large enough that you can withstand all the travel and the extra midweek match that goes with it.
And then for those of you, since we're mostly League One focused, a lot of you may not know this, but the Las Vegas Lights are actually one of the surprise teams so far in USL Championship. They are tied for third place in the Western Conference, sitting on 9 points, which is not where a lot of people had them to start the year. So it's looking like the Tucson has a team in pretty good form, but I think it's going to be a real fun game, and you should all tune in.
And you won't have to deal with, llamas potentially walking on the pitch.
We have a no llama zone. And I guess, we'll see. I think the big debate is how many of these LAFC loan players are going to actually show up here on Wednesday.
We're the mattresses.
Yeah.
The beds on the field side.
Coach, we have one quick question. I know you got to leave pretty soon, so we have one question that we have to ask you. Do you have a pregame meal?
Oh God,
we have to know. We've asked every other coach.
Sure.
So your friend down in
Chattanooga
Chattanooga
have a pregame meal?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So do I have a pregame meal that I eat?
Yep.
Is that the question?
Yeah.
Yep.
To be honest with you, I struggle to eat on game day. I usually. The team has a pregame meal. For myself, no. It's like water in like a power bar, because I'll just throw up. I mean, I get so wound up in the preparation right before the moment, and then when the moment hits, I'm incredibly calm. So when you can control things like in training and right before, it's never a comfortable time for me to eat where I'm relaxed. Once literally I hit the locker room to give the first speech before we go out for warm up, I'm completely relaxed. So yeah. I would say, Cliff Bar, water, nothing. And then there's just too much adrenaline going for me to be hungry.
All right. That is not the most obscure answer. So congratulations.
Actually.
That's actually a reasonable answer. Our friend Jimmy O'Blade over in Chattanooga has tuna and peanut butter.
Well,
that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's first of all, it's just here right now. Probably don't have a ton in common in terms of eating or anything else. So, if he wants to eat tuna and peanut butter, that's his prerogative.
I just can't. The peanut butter and tuna just still gets me every time. Coach, I know you have to go, so I appreciate you jumping on with us. Amanda, if you're going to stick around for a few minutes, you're happy to.
Yes,
more than happy to keep talking to you.
Okay.
I just want to say thank you, and you guys have some, great places to go and really intense places that have really great traditions. And for Madison, I just want you to know Matt's a friend. You got a great one there. And Jay Mims is one of the hardest working guys as well. So there's some great coaches, some great history, and there's going to be great. This league is going to be tight as a drum this year. So every game is going to feel like a playoff game. I can already feel that from game one. And I'm really excited just to have the opportunity to coach in the league. And I'm really, really excited.
Yeah,
Thanks, Pearl.
Thank you.
So, Amanda, it's not lost on me that you are the second female president in U.S. soccer men's history. Like, that's a huge, huge honor. Like, how do you hope to, I don't want to say inspire, because that feels bleh. How do you hope that the role expands so that you no longer have to say first, second, third? It's just you're the president.
Well, I was this close to leaving the sport. I didn't stay in long because I could quickly see what the disadvantages of being a female CEO or president. And it's not like I'm not a gender basher, male basher kind of person. I believe in meritocracy. I totally believe that, that we, shouldn't necessarily have to, discount people based on their gender or whatnot. But it is challenging to oversee men who have been in the industry longer than you. I rise to the ranks pretty quickly. Now, it's not to say I didn't have a big career behind pre-soccer that I feel like totally groomed me for what I'm doing today. And I totally believe today that I am like the perfect person for this job. But I think the hard part is you don't see enough women at my level. You do now, but I think a lot of women quit till they leave industry because they either say, look, to go and take control over a head coach. And there's a lot of egos in our business. Okay. We all have them a little bit, but a coach who might have, 20 years more experience, or maybe they're coming from a different system where the front office president doesn't really have that much say over what they do. It all kind of goes back to like what your team ownership and sort of ethos is there. And it's scary to kind of stand up to your coach and say, no, I want things done this way, especially if you're also not a technical expert. So I think for me, I try to just be a good professional that also has some humility and knows I don't know everything. And I want to be surrounded around people where we're all learning and we're not afraid to say that we don't know something. I think on the flip side of that, as a woman, I'm also, I think, expected a lot to support women empowerment. And I think we need to talk about what does women empowerment really look like. My nickname is Bab, badass bitch. And that is, obviously from Ted Lasso. And I'm trying to take ownership on that, how can you be a Bab and support other Babs that are coming up, but it's not like an ego or a cat thing, like women kind of put, and because women can do that to one another. And I certainly have had my experience of that. So what I'm trying to learn right now is to be okay. I also just turned 40. So it's almost as if like I had something kind of lifted. I think women, when they get a little bit more comfortable with who they are, and don't care so much about what other people think, you can kind of step into your own. And if there's one thing that I want to teach women is to be everything that they thought they could be. And then just accept who they are along that journey, but don't get so caught up in the journey and where you're supposed to go along your journey, and what you think it's supposed to look like. And I think that was really hard for my soccer story. When I was offered the job, I was like, I'm new to soccer. I've never played soccer. How could I do this? And then I finally kind of went through enough experience and, and having obviously a team owner and obviously the folks at the league are extremely, supportive of me. I'm a board of governor member as well. So, they just told me to quiet that stuff out. So, if anything, I just serve as a perfect example of the kinds of audiences that we need to be talking to in the community and on the sideline of the youth game to grow our sport. So I think we got a lot of different, male coaches and people who have been in the business a long time. I just think that sometimes there's a different process that females can take on certain things that may or may not be better than males, but at the end of the day, it's my perspective, and my perspective is more circular and trying to find like the context to make things better, not just always kind of using maybe traditional linear approaches to things.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know you kind of mentioned earlier, talking about how maybe one of the things that we need to do in American soccer is kind of bringing people that weren't involved in it early on, or maybe weren't a part of it before, and try to get them in. So what are some of the things, I know you mentioned like this night at the barrio, stuff like that. What are some other things that you're trying to do in the Tucson area to kind of get those people that might not know anything or have ever had interest in soccer and get them involved?
Well, first we have to, my talking points, I can almost guarantee you that if I get a meeting, 60-minute meeting with a business leader or an official or some sort of community leader, they will end that meeting going, sign me up. How do I get involved? And that meeting is a conversation, and that conversation needs some aids. And so we developed a really nice kind of company overview brochure this last year that explained all that we do. We, talk about the MLS preseason. We talk about our mission. We talk about our community corner initiative, which basically Cox Community Corner is we go and pick kids up from a satellite location in a nice like pimp SUV. We bring them into our VIP lot. I greet them. I give them swag, and then I march them on the field during warm-ups, and then I sit them on a tableside dinner. Healthy, organic food that our players eat, feed them healthy meals, and basically treat them like kings and queens, and they leave going, all I had to do was just show up, and I'm like, It's lessons like that that exceed what we do on the pitch. It's things like that once people start to hear, oh my gosh, FC Tucson is doing what? They're investing in our kids. On the back end, we're also trying to track data to see if these kinds of initiatives move the needle in these kids' lives. Like, are they more engaged in the classroom? I don't care if they become FC Tucson fans. Like, that's just icing on the cake. And so but I can assure you that 90% of those kids who come through our community corner program, which is about 30 every game, they're leaving fans. And now like one school in particular that we brought in has a high refugee population, mostly West African. And one of our academy volunteer coaches the high school team. And so I brought them in. And now those kids are looking at our academy and want to go to the open trial. And now they're like, can we go to the open trial for the first team? Before, they could never tell you what USL was. They couldn't tell you what a third division team was. But now they know we're the top dog in town. And they know now that their path to pro could be us. And so, again, if there's anything that we can do to kind of keep kids thinking bigger, aspiring for greatness, like, to me, that's the new patriotism that I want to focus on. I want to focus on how we're making kids in our community stronger and totally apolitical. So a lot of the things that we do are sort of rooted in this like vision of giving the game away as much as possible. So we have sponsors who can underwrite our clinics. We also need to be creating an ecosystem. I often tell people after a meeting why they need to care is that while we don't have exact quantitative data on this yet, but after the World Cup is done here in 2026, what's our growth metric that we're all stand to gain? And even if we said it's a 2x growth, I mean, if we're already short on referees and good qualified coaches, we need to get to work now to make sure that we've got enough, people in the system that can support this growth that's coming. And so what needs to happen is, I think, very succinctly being able to explain what the platform of soccer does, whether it's first, second, or third division in terms of uniting people. That's number one, critical. And then two, really kind of discerning ourselves from all the other sort of lower division teams that still kind of consider themselves professional, even though they're really not, and I won't name names, but there's a lot of confusion out there of what professional soccer is. And when people start saying we're AAA, this and that, it's like, yes, the Open Cup is a great demonstration of why we're not, a development team, but how do we say that this is really truly your true pathway to pro? And we are committed in the next 4 years to building talent so that homegrown kids here in this market and maybe even Mexico, which is, an hour south of here, we're building the next future national team members so that they can be in the hometown, home turf in 2026 playing for this. So I've just found that it's a lot of conversations with lay people. Like, I think the secret sauce that all of us in League One need to kind of, speak to is why people need to care about third division soccer in this country. And so when you look at Pepe or some of these other folks who are on the national team, Aaron Long, it's like they were here, and so, getting people to buy that one ticket. So, and so that's why our game day experience, when you come in, it's like built by the people for the people. We try to incorporate a lot of elements, like everything from mariachi to local DJs, because we have a big DJ scene in town that people want to go, hey, that's FC Tucson. Like, I'm not necessarily a soccer fan, but I'm a Tucson fan, and I'm going to go and support this club. And so, in a long roundabout way, that's what I spend countless hours. I have texts, daily from youth soccer coaches around the region that I've been developing, relationships with, middle school, high school coaches. We had a new academy coach this year. I went down to high school games and I'm bridging that gap. I speak fluent Spanish. So going down to like your totally unregistered leagues, like that it's pickup games on Sunday and there's no English being spoken to. You got to go down there and meet people because they're like used to cheering for their Liga MX team or their home country. And they're like, why should I care about a USL team? And it's like, well, if you have a young son or daughter, we're that path to pro. Or, hey, where else can you feel like, let's talk about creating some new American experiences under the world's game together, and bring people out of the shadows. So honestly, most of the staff that we hire here is got to have passion. We can't, teach passion. And so, so much of what we do is such a lifestyle, But I hope that answered your question. But like, we use tools. We have our brochure. You can find that on our website, which I think really, simplifies the soccer pyramid and keeps things very easy to speak to. And then also just not just talking about the wins and losses, talking about what's happening off the pitch.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I feel like having players, I think it's a sign of how good you are at finding talent and having good players when they do move up. So yes, obviously you want to still be as competitive and win titles as possible, but you're mentioning Aaron Long, someone like Charlie Dennis or Shaq Adams, like, where they can go up to the next level. It's like, it's a testament of, we are able to find these guys and be able to help you get to that goal. And I mean, that North Texas team from 2019 is ridiculously, like, we're going to look back and be like, how did anyone compete with that team between Pepe and Damus, Brian Reynolds, Justin Shea, Brandon Servino? There's so many guys. And it's like, how? So then the fact that Tucson does have guys that did go up to the championship this past offseason, that's a testament to that.
Well, even Wallace Lapsley, who was our starting keeper last year, we didn't have an option with him this last year, and he pursued some other opportunities. And because we host the MLS preseason event, the Sounders were here, and we hosted a Sounders Timbers match. And the kids who showed up to watch that game were FC Tucson fans, and they all knew Wallace, and they saw Wallace in the Sounders gear. And again, like, if there is going to be one person in this country that's going to do it, it's going to be me. And I'm going to quantify what that is, because people want to know impact numbers, and nobody has really like collected the data on this, but that's what we're trying to do. Because if that's what's going to take to kind of hit people over the heads, that it's not about dollars and cents, like this is how you grow the sport. Like, it's so many little things, but at the core of everything we do, it's about positive impacts on kids and demonstrating that soccer pyramid over and over and over again. So like, okay, Sounders, cool, great. USL championship teams, we brought them in this year. Awesome. Here's League One teams. Okay, now here's an Open Cup. so you can see, what the real difference is, if any, in some instances. But I'm just excited that League One is getting as good as it is, as quick as it is. We have to remember we're totally in the infancy of a sports league, and NFL wasn't built in a day. American soccer still has a long way to go, but I totally sip the USL Kool-Aid and believe in Alec Papadakis' vision. I see, we are totally building a pro-rel model, and we're building a development, pipeline for both the men and women's game, which I think is going to have us in a really unique sort of strategic advantage in the next 5 years.
I think that's, I was going to say, I think that's for sure, like really the coolest value proposition of USLC and USL1 and even USL2 is the fact that, I live in Omaha. We were never going to get a Big Four sport ever. Like, we're not getting the MLB, we're not getting NFL. And, I'm sure if they came to town, people would support them. But due to our media market size, we're never getting them. This is the first opportunity in my lifetime we've had to have a pro team here in Omaha. And I think that's what's so cool. And, it's like you don't have to go to Kansas City to see professional soccer. You don't have to go to Chicago to see pro sports. You can do it right in your backyard, and you can get in on the ground level and be a part of it and be part of what really like defines the culture and the team and everything else. And I think that's what makes it so cool, especially as the league continues to develop and we can keep sending talent up and abroad. I know Omaha just sent one of our younger players, Yoskar, to the U20 Guatemala team, which is so cool. And this is a kid who they had to like kind of force feed him the answer during the USL Academy Cup of like even considering pro soccer as like a career path. And now he's playing for the national team. And it's so cool to see that happen in, the 2 years we've been around. And, you replicate that across the league, and it's like the power that you have for the sport is ginormous.
Yeah. Well, and that's a really good point about I think the point about players seeing themselves as this as a career. I know that's a lot of the discussion in the women's game. My friend Amanda Vandervoort, as you guys probably know, she was the FIFA Pro Chief Women's Football Officer, and she went around the world working to get women players to understand, like, this isn't a hobby. This is your career. You're a professional athlete. And I think, aside from like women kind of not really seeing themselves that way, we need players who are maybe young to see themselves as becoming pro players, but also if they have that they come to that realization, okay, well, maybe I'm not going to be a professional player, but how can I give back? This sport is going to be so in dire needs of qualified coaches and qualified referees and people working in the industry in the next 4 years, that how can we create sort of a loop or an ecosystem? And so like we've hired our women's coach 2 months earlier than we normally do, because she's making that big jump of going from being a, undefeated women's, champion high school team coach and a WPSL coach, but how can she see herself like quitting her part-time job to do this full time? Like, that's just not in people's thought process. Nobody is thinking like, oh, I can be a professional coach when I grow up, or a professional player. But that's the other side of what we're doing, is we need to put in people's minds that, okay, well, once your college career or your professional career is over, here's a pathway to getting licensed. Here's a pathway to working in pro sports, and you don't even need to leave your city. Like, I go to so many high schools and I speak in front of classrooms, and I'm like, how many of you want to be content creators? And they're all like, oh, we all want to be content. I'm like, what do you think sports is? So come and get a job in pro sports. Come and do an internship with us, or start out as an equipment. You want to work with the team? You start out as an equipment manager. We can, spend some time with us, and we can put you on a path to becoming a licensed coach. So we're doing a lot of like the deep kind of back end organizational development and strategic work to be able to offer that to people. Because, that's also going to be our evangelist for getting people in the stands and wanting to be supporters. It's a total symbiotic sort of relationship, and just, it really truly is an ecosystem that we need everybody to play well together. And we need the youths, need the new youth coaches to kind of, get out of obsessively trying to get youth fees and win games and poach players and create all that youth soccer drama that exists in every city in America. It's not immune. I've seen it at all the markets that I've been into, but and really get everybody kind of on the same page going, look, 2026 is where we all stand to gain. What do we need to do until then on the professional level, all the way down to the rec level? So like I have, the superintendent of Pima County Schools coming in, and I'm going to have a conversation with them about how can we, incorporate soccer and FC Tucson specifically in the middle school space. You could have a talent who just doesn't have access to a proper coach or a team, and we want to be able to break that, or at least provide that access at no cost.
I want to ask you this question. You probably already talked about it, but what went into the process of starting up a women's team for FC Tucson? You guys were just recently owned by a USL Championship team, and you guys are just getting your legs of being an independent team. What kind of went into the process of wanting to expand the game to women more in that area?
So this will be the 9th season for FC Tucson women, and they've always been WPSL. And prior to that, but it's a good question, but prior to that, there used to be some WPSL or, there's been several failed women's leagues in the past. And, there was some women's teams that started. And if you think about it, similar to the PDL, it's like an 8-week season. You got 8 games. You got to deal with college clearances and when it's okay to talk to a coach. So we've developed really good relationships with Becca Moros, who used to be a Gotham FC assistant coach, and now she's running U of A. So she's coming from that pro side going to college, which is a big adjustment. But, you've got to be able to have that good sort of relationship for your pipeline on the women's side. And because U of A doesn't have a men's D1 program, we see ourselves as an important fixture in the community to want to continue to support the women's program, if that makes sense. Yes, we have the men's program, but I think especially in cities like Albuquerque, we have a really good women's program, but they lost a really good men's D1 program. We need to try to get those back. we need to figure out a way to do that. And so if we can demonstrate within the women's space that there's a good synergy, it either keeps your players in market, doesn't have them leaving to go back, or it could be a nice, augment to an existing recruiting sort of, skill. Or if people know, if players know that Southern Arizona is literally the hottest place in America to play soccer in the summer times, we'll take that. We have amazing facilities. And, for me personally, why I am investing more money in our women's team and why is because I was absolutely dumbfounded to hear, how they budgeted and how they approached the women's season in the past. And it's always been an afterthought. And I believe that the youth program had started it originally because there was some great coaches who had started it in the past, and the youth went and did it. And then when the FC Tucson youth kind of merger happened, that's where it kind of came under our tent. And so we didn't have a season for 2019 or 2020 or 2020, but we had one for 19. And it's just one of those things where, if you have no offense, but if you have a bunch of dudes running a men's team and then you're treating the women's team like an afterthought, your women's team is going to be they're going to probably be like a chip on their shoulder and want to show the community that they can get women, fans to the game. But at the same time, they're going to be see, why aren't you investing in the women's game when there's all of this opportunity? So I don't want to continue that narrative. I want to kind of shut that down. And so what I feel like is real, we would average 500 fans a game to our women's games. And you had to pay to come into our women's games, whereas every other team in our conference, you do not. And we tried to, really make our women's games pro. And we did sign one player last year, Luz Duarte. She's playing for Pumas Femenil now in Mexico City on her first ever pro contract. So it's stories like that that we want to tell, especially if Chicana or Latino women growing up in South Tucson want, some role models and to keep their hopes high. Luz's story is one of those amazing stories.
And I have another question for you. So as long as Tucson's been in USL League One, they've had to make the farthest trip all the
Yes.
time.
All the time.
How does it feel now to have another West Coast buddy in Central Valley Fuego? What does that mean?
Even Northern Colorado is not as bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's still gotta come east. Now they get to go west.
I
It's
mean,
only one
yeah,
time
true.
zone.
It is, yeah. So, so I went on this trip this weekend and I dealt with all the same travel issues that our teams deal with, traveling 3 time zones. My connecting flight in Denver got canceled. I had a red eye to Dulles and drive down to Richmond. I mean, to go through that as a club president, no, I do not ride around in jets. But to go through that, it really helps you to understand how challenging this league is and why the road games, are like, it's tough to win on the road in League One. And so again, it kind of goes back to like, we're in the infancy of this league. We need to make sure we can, develop some conferences here so that we can cut down on travel, because that's what's always hurt American soccer was the cost of travel. So I'm grateful that Fresno's back in the game. Fresno had an amazing USL championship team. And prior to that, the Foxes, they were very successful in their market. Chris Lewis is no longer the president at Fuego, but I had developed a great relationship with him. I love everything that they're doing. In fact, they signed a couple of players that I was looking at signing. And anyway, I'm just grateful that they got Bijab and some other folks out there that I think are going to make them a real threat. And I'm just happy to see that, that some people are carrying the torch. When whoever started the Fresno Foxes and whoever came after that with the USL championship, like you had to have somebody championing for soccer in Fresno. And I grew up in San Diego. Let me tell you, Fresno is not exactly like the greatest place in California, but that just goes to show you like what soccer means to an identity of a community and how important it is to keep that and grow that. And so I'm glad to see that there's a California team in there, and I'm glad to see that it's coming from a pedigree where they're familiar with USL and that they've got a really motivated ownership group and they're putting a really talented staff together. So yes, we're very happy to have another couple of teams in our sort of, time zone, but it is tough traveling on the road with this schedule. So it's very hard.
Mm-hmm. Well, Greenville learned the hard way not to take those first-year teams for granted this weekend, didn't they?
Yes. Yeah. So I was surprised to see Greenville go down this year in that game. But, I also, coming off a 4-0 loss, I'm going to say the season's young and a lot can happen.
One game does not indicate, it's not statistically significant, as our friend Brandon Mays would say if he was on the program today.
I'm okay if we end the season right now. I'd be totally fine with it.
Oh, I'll be really fine. Yeah,
well, I mean, it would be fitting for Madison to end the season with all ties, wouldn't it? It's
a playoff team. It's a playoff team. That is what
I get the home
for.
playoff game, so that works for me. Weekend is now. I don't know what we're talking about. Amanda, we just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day for hopping on the show with us. You have been an amazing conversation, and I think like a lot of the stuff you guys are doing out there outside of what's happening on the field, you guys are doing a lot of amazing and great work, and we are definitely rooting for you guys going forward.
Thank you. It's definitely a work of passion. We did some great hiring in the off season, and some of the things that we have learned in the pandemic about, with the Great Resignation and everything else, is like how we got to keep people inspired. We got to keep them passionate, but not burn them out. And, when it starts to hit triple digit weather here for 5 months, it's hard. This is the hardest part of my job is that I'm a former distance swimmer, collegiate All-American swimmer and runner. And so my stamina is like really, really high and I could just go. And I have to remember not everybody's there. And like Rome was not built in a day. But I think, with folks like you, where you're out there taking an interest in this like burgeoning, league, that's got a lot of potential, but at the end of the day is about pride. It's about tradition. It's about a sense of identity, like we got to keep this alive. And I think, you can ask an NFL or a NASCAR fan. They don't necessarily have to know soccer, but they would probably be really disappointed to hear that the U.S. men, had not fielded a competitive team in the World Cup, in the last, until now. Like, I think a lot of people would be really surprised to hear that fact. And so every single thing that we are doing in this industry is going to help change that narrative, and hopefully for the positive, so that maybe the USA will have a great finish one year at the World Cup. And I just think that League One is, I think The Athletic had a great survey a couple years ago that they put out about the potential for League One's growth. If you guys haven't seen it, I'd be happy to share it with you. But I really do. You guys probably participated in it, but
I probably did. I just don't remember.
We probably did. But stay on the firing lines as well, and continue to, there's so much of soccer knowledge that you guys have, not just about your respective teams, but like what the challenge is to, keep this game growing. And I'm confident that enough people are kind of looking out and going, this USL, it's been around 10 years. It's kind of interesting to see. I'm kind of interested to see it play out. But you bring in Detroit City and some of these other teams that are, kind of showing these great supporters culture, like we can keep building on that. And I think bring a lot of people who aren't soccer experts, want to come in and join the flock or the ruse or what am I missing here? Oh yeah, the Owls. What do you guys?
There's a couple of them.
The Brujas.
Too damn many.
The internet psychopaths.
The internet psychopaths.
Your words, not mine. Your words, not mine.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say I do have one question. Speaking of Omaha, I did hear from somebody in Omaha that you're a big Wu-Tang Clan fan. What is your favorite song or member of Wu-Tang?
Well, I have to say that the RZA is always going to be my fave, just because of the beats that he created and continues to make. But I had this obsession with the Ghostface Killah album, Iron Man 5000. Is that what it was? Iron Man 500, back in the 90s. Yeah. I probably had every solo artist CD in the 90s, early 2000s. And I've seen Raekwon the Chef and Ghostface and the RZA perform live. But yeah, I could talk a lot about East Coast hip hop if we wanted to. But definitely, I think it's the RZA. I got everything from the, Cream to Bobby Digital. So yeah, we can.
Bangers. Okay.
Yeah, we can talk about the RZA, and I like the RZA. Yes.
That makes me happy to know that there's a world where Amanda Powers is somewhere in college listening to Old Dirty Bastard.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
That is peak hilarious.
Yeah. No. And I was at the, the Hard Knock. Don't judge a book by its cover over here. I'm trying to buy a set of techniques and go back to a little DJing if I could on the vinyl. But that was going to be my 40th birthday present to myself, was to get a set of turntables and get back into some DJing. But
so what you're saying is, if we do go to a Tucson game, there is a chance that you will be DJing.
I just pick the DJs now. So, but no, I definitely have a say in the music that we play at our games, for sure. You will always see me kind of manning the vibe. In fact, today we had a game day planning meeting. So last year, our players walked out to Darude's, Sandstorm? Mm-hmm. And every time we had a goal, we played DMX's Rough Rider anthem. And so now we're in that game day planning stage of okay, now that we can have walkout kids and we're going to do the international walkout, what's that song? And my creative directors, really, there was just the Tucson Hip Hop Music Festival here a couple weeks ago. It's who can we work with a local artist and license their songs? So, but here's what I really want to work on. We don't have a mascot. You got me started here, Yogi or Chip. I don't know which one of you. So there's javelina out here, and the javelina are basically like, they're not pigs, but they're wild. They're wild pigs, basically. And in some circles, they're a nuisance. My husband loves them, and I think he's going to get them tattooed on him. But they're called javelina. And so what I wanted to do was Adele the Funky Homo Sapien sort of mashup called Mr. Javelina, Mr. Bob Javelina, Mr. Javelina. If you know this song, this is Mr. Bob. This is Mr. Dabalina. So look it up. It's Del the Funky Homo Sapien, formerly of the hieroglyphics. Del is
also in my head now.
If you know the Gorillas, you know Del. He's still out there in Clint Eastwood. But so we want to try to come up with some songs about the javelina.
That is an open invite to any Tucson fan out there. Get going on it.
Get going. Yeah.
Right.
All right.
You need it. Well, thank you so much, Amanda. Lastly, where can everyone reach out to you if they have any questions or if they want to be more involved in the FC Tucson project?
I mean, I don't have like handlers who are like watching all of my emails. So people can certainly reach out to apowers@fctucson.com if you've got real questions for me. I do get all the time. Please don't send me your player videos. We get enough of those inbound requests. But yeah, no, I just, I'm helping some other folks around the league that I've met over the years that are starting League 2 teams. And I'm sending them like market analysis and some examples. There's a roadmap to this, but no two cities are the same, and, I absolutely loved Richmond. I absolutely loved it there this weekend, my dad used to live in Shockoe Bottom, and we were down on 17th and Main, and I was looking at all the murals down there, and Monument Avenue, where all the everything's come down, thank God, and and I'm looking at the Richmond Kickers fan base, and I'm like, how can we grow that even in those markets, where you have all this amazing stuff happen? So I'm just looking for people who are as passionate and fired up about, trying to grow this game at all levels, and are passionate and obsessive about it. But yeah, you can get in touch with me on Twitter or my email. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Amanda. Listeners, if you stick around, me, Chip, and Kyle are going to try our best to break down this week's games, get you ready for the U.S. Open Cup. Amanda, we will talk to you later.
Wait,
all right?
We are doing that?
Yes, Kyle. We're going to try.
Damn, I was ready for that.
All right. Good luck with that. Don't forget, Tucson wins 2-1.
Okay.
All right.
Gotcha.
Love it.
So, guys, I don't know how to tell y'all this. By the way, we're still live. I don't know how to tell y'all this. So, I kind of forgot to hit live when we started the video. So, like, it cuts in when Amanda starts talking, and totally Ebony's part is not there.
I was wondering because I was like, I can't find the link to retweet.
But I waited a little bit.
I was like, why isn't this live? And then I looked, it was like, go live. I was like, thought I set it to auto. So, yeah. So, if you just heard Stop Pickles about Amanda, that's why. Guys, we won't spend super long on it. Real quick note before we do this, Chip this Thursday is going to be hosting our first ever Twitter Spaces. You can find it on Walking 90. Chip is going to be using his own personal account. Pretty much, we're going to alternate weeks. So some weeks, 1 week, you're going to have the live show on Thursday, and the other weeks, we're going to do a Twitter Spaces, kind of like an alternating thing. Try to grow this community of USL League One talent and fun, because doing live shows every week kind of get repetitive and boring. Guys,
real quick on that, because we're doing kind of the Twitter Space thing, it's an opportunity to kind of get some other voices involved. So if you want to come in and also go live, hit me up in the DMs or hit up Walking 90 in the DMs, and we'll have some of you on as well to talk about your USL League One team. And you can cuss, so don't worry if you have problems saying curse words like I do. You're not going to get anybody in trouble.
Yeah, no.
And what time will this Twitter Space happen?
Probably 5:30 Eastern on Thursday.
All right.
Yeah, probably. All right, guys. Let's go ahead. Let's talk about it real quick. We have 4 games this weekend, opening weekend. Another quick note: the power rankings will go out tomorrow morning. It will be out tomorrow morning, so that way we can start on that. I do feel like the team that might have the number one spot is not the team that scored the most goals this weekend. I think number one spot might go to Fuego. What do you guys think about that? 2-0 win over Greenville, first debut win.
I would say it was the most impressive performance of the weekend. I think it was there to go into Greenville and out Greenville them. Like I would say, like it was. It might not have been the highest goal output. It might not have been. It was still very impressive, and the fact that they kind of came in and did what they needed to. They looked like the team that they were trying to be. They're a team that wants to be on the ball. They're a team that wants to be on the front foot, and to go into Greenville and do that, it was a very impressive outcome. I mean, yeah, Greenville could have easily gotten 1 or 2 goals, and it could have been a different story. But the fact that Fuego kind of just took the game to them really does stand out. I know there was apparently a lot of softness coming around, and I think that's just called shithousery. And ironically, Greenville fans should be okay with shithousery because that is what their brand is built on.
Right. Chip, what's your thoughts on this, man?
So I agree that I think out of all the wins from this weekend, that was probably the most impressive result. You have Greenville, who I think most people kind of had penned in as maybe the number one team, or at least like number 2 or number 3. And Fresno, who I have them as a playoff team at the beginning of the year, but kind of like towards like the 5, 6, 7, 8 range. Mm-hmm. So I was saying that they would get a draw mostly because I was trying to be a shitbird. So I was definitely, I've never been a shitbird before in my life. But yeah, I was really impressed to see that. I watched the game when I came home Saturday night, and the goals weren't the prettiest goals in the world. You could say that they were kind of sloppy, but at the same time, a lot of that was because they're being very intentional with their pressing up top, and they made Greenville commit some errors, and that's where they scored. And so, that's, if they keep doing that and keep getting results like that, it's going to be a good season for those Fuego fans. And yeah, I could definitely, especially with not every team participating, I could definitely see them being a lot of people's number one team going into week 2.
Yeah, most definitely. And now this isn't to say, like, we went back and rewatched it. I think we all kind of agree that Greenville got unlucky. They had some good shots on goal. I think John Hart is going to be more pissed about the opportunity of the second goal where the center back kind of collided with the other player. I think he's going to be more pissed about that than dropping the points. But hey, you take advantage of the opportunity, the chances. I think the next game we're going to talk about, definitely there was a lack of chances, and I think it was kind of disappointing on both sides of what we were expecting. Was the Northern Carolina FC versus Tormenta FC. Not a game with a lot of chances. You had the one shot from the header goal from Graham McLaughlin, the guy I voted as the Golden Boot winner this year. Just want to say I'll put him on 5-a-side to you. I was getting off to a great start. Olex Anderson did seem to pull up around the 46th minute on that cross attempt. Chip, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on this game and how everything played out?
I'd like to apologize to everybody who watched that game because we said it was going to be the Fives game of the week. I'm sorry. I did not know. I think it's definitely one of those games where I said on the preseason show or the week 1 show that it was an opportunity for both teams to kind of change the narrative about who they were last year. I don't think either team really did that. Tormenta controlled the game. They had like 77% possession and they didn't score. And it was a lot of that lack of buildup and everything else. And they have a lot of firepower up top, but you wouldn't have known it watching that game. And then I think for NCFC, it was one of those, like, it definitely screamed inexperience because they had less than 100 passes that game. Like, how do you win with less than 100 passes and 11 men on the field?
Bunker.
Yeah, so
you use the ball as far forward as you can and hope for the best.
Yeah, so it was definitely one of those. Again, apologize if that was your first USL 1 game and you watched because we recommended it, but I think it was an ugly game. I think I don't really think I know any more about these two teams after watching it, and it's going to be interesting to see them play a bit more. I think Tormenta maybe still just needs a little bit more time to kind of figure out some of their connection between the midfield and the attack. And NCFC, I mean, they play like that all season, it's going to be really hard to watch their games.
Right. Kyle, let me ask you this question, man. Tormenta, we were kind of hyping this team up as they rebuilt, they retooled. They got the brand new jerseys, they got the ball kit. They got these exciting players. I know it's the first game, but was it kind of a flat start for FC Tucson, or is this kind of just, hey, is this just one game and then we'll just knock it to the side?
Wait. Okay.
I confuse you.
Yes.
Let me ask you this.
He wants you to shit talk on Tucson so he doesn't have to do it.
For some reason, I thought we were still talking about Tormenta with their new kit, so I got sidetracked.
Oh
Anyway,
my God.
No. So it's interesting because on the one hand, you would think that Tucson would want to start the season after getting thrashed in the playoff game, as Coach Pearlman said, like everything that went wrong, anything that could go wrong went wrong, hoping you just turn that around. And it just didn't happen. And I mean, the first goal was kind of indicative of it. It's, it goes out wide and you leave Terzaghi pretty much unmarked in the box. That's going to result. That's just going to make things from bad to worse. So you have that. And then as the game's going on, like it still seemed like Tucson was still in the game. So it's not like they were just completely overwhelmed. They were in the game for most of the first half. The second goal, obviously, I think that didn't make things better. But it was as soon as, Vigneault's got that second goal, that's when you kind of started seeing it just go downhill, and obviously the red card near the end. But, I mean, I don't think it's anything to worry about per se, but it's definitely I would say I wouldn't hit the panic button, but it definitely would maybe have me go, okay, what the heck? Like, hopefully this is just another one-off. But it's not ideal. It's not the ideal start you would want to have after the playoff game from last season.
Yeah. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think for that game, it's definitely one of those ones where if I was a Tucson fan, I'd be okay losing if we had scored at least 1 or 2 goals, not to make it closer, but just to show we could. Richmond's never really been like a super defensive team. They've always had really good offensive firepower. And I think that you're a team that made your trade last year on scoring lots of goals for FC Tucson, and to just go in there and have nothing to show for it, that maybe worries me a little bit. A lot of these squads still haven't played together a long time. It's the first game of the year. You had to travel. There's a lot of things. Just a bad night. I think it's going to be really interesting to see them in the next couple of games. They've got Las Vegas Lights in an Open Cup game at home, which I think will be very interesting. And then I think they have Ford Madison, not this week, but the week after at home. And for that game, I think that's a winnable game for them. It's at least a drawable game. And so I think if you can put up a good fight against the Lights, maybe not win, but show that there's some fight there, and then get a result against Madison, it's something where if I was a Tucson fan, I would have a lot more confidence and just say that first game, it was what it was, and let's just move on from it.
And the fact that they didn't score from a corner, and last year they were very successful in doing that, and they had like 17 corners that could have got 1 goal. That's all. I also feel like that's just a weird, I don't want to say statistical anomaly, but I feel like most games with Tucson, you would expect them to get a goal out of a corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the main that I'm going to talk about Richmond on this. I think if you would have told anyone that Richmond scored 4 goals, you would have imagined that Emiliano Terzaghi would have had more than just 1, and he would have been a bigger force throughout the game. And I think it really is a positive sign that not only did we have 3 different goal scorers, but Neil and then also Matt Bentley coming off the bench. We had an assist for a fullback, so it just shows that the offensive power of this team is getting better and stronger. Also defensively, Chip, I'm going to push back a little bit, and we don't have to go divulge the point too much, but I think the back line of Richmond really showed their sturdiness. Granted, it's 3 out of 4 new players on the back line, but outside of the change in the 38th minute that came off of a corner and then a free kick late on, I want to say there wasn't any danger chances. And last year, we know there were moments and opportunities where the back line would get stretched and transitional awareness just wasn't all the way there for this team. And I got to tip my hat to Darren Sawatsky. He played his cards right in this game. He played his cards right.
And that's definitely a really good development for Richmond, because they did give up a lot of those late goals last year and everything else. And I think in this league, it's the name of the game. It's avoid draws at the last minute and turn losses into draws. That's why Madison's coach isn't there anymore, because they couldn't capitalize that. And that's why Jay Mims ended up winning last year, is because he found a way to turn draws into wins and losses into draws. And if a lot of that starts with that back four and the goalie, and for Richmond, they've always had a strong goalie. And if they can have a similar season to Omaha's defense last year, where you give Akira a little bit more of a break, so he's not, facing all those shots, it's going to be one of those things that really turns that around and has them having a lot of success.
Most definitely. And speaking about Madison, I think the team that we all should have picked for the chaos game of the week, this Madison Chattanooga game. Kyle, starting with you off with your Mingos. How much did you lose your shit when that goal went in, and how badly did the babies wake up?
Ironically, I just kind of just like threw my arms up. I was like, okay, well, shit. Like that was my reaction. I was like, well, shit. Like nothing you could do about it. Could they have cleared it ahead of time and done better, like dealing with the cross that came in? Yes. But in terms of the goal itself, it's like I was not like super pissed off. It was just one of those like, it's a really good goal. It's annoying how good that goal is. I wish it didn't happen against Madison. I can't fault Brino like for not being in the right position. I can't the only thing I could have been mad about is the build up to it. They could have dealt with it better, but it was a really good goal too. Like otherwise, I mean, Brino was fantastic. So if that kind of made me feel like, all right, if you're in order to beat him, you're gonna have to make it literally unsavable, and that's what happened. So did not lose my shit that much on the Chattanooga goal. I feel like if it was reverse and say Madison had scored in the first half and then conceded late through that would have been a different story. Then I would have lost my shit.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, we all know Jimmy was going into this game down a couple of pieces. Wasn't his art-tune system. But I gotta say, I was impressed to see how they played for the most part. I know he's going to be very frustrated with that late goal giving up and Madison coach. I think there is a little bit of concern about how Madison played offensively. Missing that core piece. I think Madison would do really well with a target striker. But we'll see how it goes. Getting on the line, these are the first games, and we see how things shake out from there.
Yeah, and I was going to say Chattanooga was very physical and they pressed Madison a lot in the first half, and it was a very high and very impressive press, which made things difficult for Madison to kind of do any build-up. You could kind of see they're trying, but when you're only having two central midfielders, it definitely makes it tougher for them to kind of get involved, and your only hopes is to kind of go out wide or launch it to, your striker who, yeah, he can kind of do the build-up stuff, but it's not really what he's there for. Now, the finished one that came in, Strang, number 9, he would have been more of that target man that they would look for. But no, Chattanooga's really physical and impressive the first, I would say, 70-ish minutes, and then I think fatigue started to wear in, and I think that was why Madison was able to get that goal, because then they were kind of driving it more at Chattanooga, and they just didn't. I think that's where the injuries kind of played more of a part, with not having the core pieces. Is it kind of, I think the press plus not having their top guys definitely wore them down. So it was, I mean, yeah, Madison definitely was not overall like world beating or looking that great, but I also think it's still very early in the season, and I at least see what they're trying to do. It's just a matter of when is it going to start looking more and more fluid, and because they were like heavy touches and like bad passes, and passes were slow. So I think a lot of it's just trying to get your legs used to, like, get your legs back into it.
Yeah. And hats off to Madison for sure on that, because I don't think that's a game that Madison gets a result on last year. They could have easily given up, but then in the, I think, like 75th minute, they seemed to find an extra gear and fight on and get that goal at the death of the game. And like kind of what we talked about earlier is, that's where you're going to find success if you can turn losses into ties and ties into wins. And that's what Madison went down, got a result on the road against a team that
a good Chattanooga team.
Yeah,
a good point on the road. Like I said,
Chattanooga.
Take the point and get the hell out.
So I think if you're a Madison fan, like, don't hang your head on it. If you're a Chattanooga fan, I think again, like, I think a lot of it's injuries, and unfortunately that's just what it is. But hats off to Ableda. They were in that game a lot more than I thought they would be, and Madison definitely bit on some of their antics a lot. And so it says a lot that when you're short staffed like that, you can control kind of how the game is played. And if they had some fresher legs, I think maybe they would have been able to hold off and get the win, but they didn't. So Madison's going back up north with 1 point in the kitty, with Omaha coming in this weekend.
And a cup game on Wednesday. It'll be interesting to see how much rotation happens between those two matches.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we won't spend too much time on the cup games. We already gave our predictions and stuff like that. So guys, I answer this question so we can get to the end of the show. Based on this week's results, has your opinion changed on any team going into U.S. Open Cup weekend? I think mine have changed on 2, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts.
I don't think so. I figured North Carolina was going to be more improved, so I'm not surprised that they're kind of. I guess not really. Like I'm intrigued to see how Tormenta bounces back. I'm intrigued to see how Tucson bounces back. It'll be. I'll say those are the two that I'm going to probably keep my eye on just to see how do they rebound and how does Chattanooga, if they're still shorthanded, handle a good Louisville team on the road. That if they can walk away with a win, I think that would be a huge boost to them. But I would say how the two teams that lost, I would say how Tucson and Tormenta losing, what are they going to be able to do? And then Greenville and Chattanooga, how are they going to handle a USL championship team that are one's doing really well in Louisville and the others maybe. It's very interesting with Oakland because I feel like they should be better and they just haven't.
Mm-hmm. They've really struggled, and again they have another game this week, so they're crisscrossing the country. They're just at Tampa Bay, and now I'm assuming they stayed out there because that would be really rough. But that's a lot of travel. That's a lot of time away from home. It'll be interesting. For me, I would say I don't know if I'm ready to flip Madison and Tormenta yet. I think I have when I did my preseason top 11, I think I had them kind of on the same tier as teams that would challenge for the playoffs, but I had Tormenta ultimately on top there. I don't know if I'd switch them yet. I think a lot of my questions about Madison are offensively related. I don't know if they necessarily showed that they have a lot of fortitude on the attack yet. Still a lot of time. I think they were going to be a defensive team, and they seem to be that still. I would definitely say if it wasn't for the fact that Chattanooga was out so many players, I might move Fuego up a little bit more, but I still had them rated pretty highly. I think I had them at 5th and Chattanooga at 3rd. So, they're both pretty good teams. And yeah, I mean, I think again, like probably the biggest statement win was that Fuego game. And it's going to kind of be interesting to see what people do in week 2 and week 3 and what's going to happen. It's going to be really exciting, and I'm excited for Omaha to get to play this weekend, so we can see what's going on there, because I might be eating a lot of crow.
Let's see. I mean, personally for me, I think the two teams that I'm a little bit concerned about is definitely Tormenta and definitely I would say Greenville. But I'm not really concerned about that. I think it's more so Tormenta and who does Fuego play again? I don't remember.
Fuego plays Charlotte.
No, in the U.S. Open Cup.
Oh, I don't remember.
Why do I want to say it's...
I'm pulling it up.
El Paso. I'm like 99% sure it's El Paso.
Yeah.
They are playing, El Paso tomorrow. And that's at Fuego.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm really just a little bit concerned about really Tormenta, FC Tucson, and Fuego. But I understand Fuego got the win. I'm just more so concerned about, are they going to try to throw all their power at all the games going on, or are they going to try to pace themselves just out of that? But you can hear more about that on our previous show, the US Open Cup, and also on Thursday, because our man Chip is going to be hosting the first ever Spaces. So, guys, before we wrap up, final thoughts on this opening weekend. What you guys got?
It was nice having the league back, and it was kind of nice, especially like you could start with the Richmond game, and then like 30 minutes later, the Greenville match started, and then like 30 minutes later, like the Madison, Chattanooga, and then like North Carolina. Like you had pretty much 4 matches going on at once. So that was kind of cool. If I had more screens, I would have been able to watch all of them at once. But that was just it's nice having the league back, and I think having kind of just getting the league in action happening is kind of always great. So yeah.
Right.
I agree. Definitely having games back feels great. You know, watching championship for the 3 weekends before, you know, kind of had me having some FOMO about not getting to watch my team play, especially sitting out this week. I'm really excited we get a 2 for. That being said, before we go to the stadiums again, you should all check out Yogi's episode of Can I Kick It on gatekeeping. I thought it was really, really good. Podcast on gatekeeping. It stemmed from that incident in Atlanta, and I think they definitely did a good job of not just dunking on the guy, but actually having a very thoughtful conversation about gatekeeping. And the biggest takeaway from it is you might be gatekeeping and not even realize it. So you got to think about, like, what are you doing when you're interacting with new people? Are you being something that's going to make people want to come back, or are you not? And I think that's a big thing is, you know, let's be as welcoming as possible. And, you know, someone got all of us into this, and wouldn't it be cool to be that person that got someone into your local soccer team this year?
Absolutely right. Thank you. See, that's all I Chip. Also, shout out to Ross Davenport. He gave us a shout out on the Greenville game, so make sure to support him on social media. But with that being said, guys, my name's Elliot. That's Kyle. That's Chip. Eboni is out in Kentucky drinking bourbon and dealing with crappy hotel internet. We will holler at you guys later. Be safe and be easy.